You may have recalled Strider Wasilewski's horse race call of the paddle battle between CT surfers Crosby Colapinto and Seth Moniz in the elimination round at the Tahiti Pro. As much as we all loved his call, which elevated the entertainment level immensely, this paddle battle showed fantastic examples of good sprint paddling technique, followed by the technique breaking down once the surfers began to fatigue near the middle and end. Hi everyone, my name is Rob Case, and I'm a paddling technique coach located in Northern California. In this video, I'm going to show you the top 3 techniques both surfers used that were good, and the top 3 bad techniques they ended up using once they fatigued. And I'm going to add a few bonuses at the end. The first good technique both surfers display is their entry point. Neither is overreaching before they enter the water. This aids in making sure their hands and arms arrive at the propulsive phase of the stroke faster. Now, a good entry point is only half the equation to getting to the propulsive phase faster. The next good technique they both use is good entry angle for the sprint technique. With an elevated elbow, they're able to dive the hand and arm straight to the front propulsive phase with as little added drag as possible. This also allows the hand and arm to begin at an advantage in terms of arm orientation for the propulsive phases of the stroke. The last good technique both surfers use is their kick. Shallow, quick kicks lift the back of the body and board and therefore reduces general form drag. 2 separate surf studies showed that kicking in this manner, shallow, quick flutter kicks, increases surfer velocity in flat water. Now, as a byproduct, kicking in this manner locks the lower trunk in place, which forces the surfers to drive rotation from their shoulders instead of their whole body, in order to increase their stroke rate. And in about 7 seconds into the battle, we see the first of 3 bad paddling techniques begin to show. The entry point for Crosby extends past an optimal point, causing him to begin overreaching slightly with his right arm, which then causes him to push down in the first part of his stroke, and doesn't allow the entry angle to dive straight to the propulsive phase. This poor technique then snowballs a few seconds later, as we see Crosby and Seth, to a certain degree, begin to have a straight arm recovery. This straight arm recovery causes the hand and arm to travel farther than before, thereby reducing the stroke rate slightly and extends the time it takes to get back to the propulsive phase of the stroke, which ends up being a delay on their propulsion. Lastly, as the surfers fatigue, they both begin to enter wider than before, reducing the opportunity for them to use their big power muscles in their lats and pecs to produce effective propulsion. Nobody gets out of a pool with their hands wide. In order to use the power muscles in our bodies effectively, we need to make sure our arms and hands stay in front of our shoulders. Now, as a bonus, there are a few factors that contributed to Seth winning priority over Crosby, despite Crosby having more advantages than Seth overall. Now, those advantages Crosby had were: 1, he had momentum on his feet after kicking out from the wave. While a surfer is still planing, there is the least amount of drag and therefore the most efficient movement in a given direction. Crosby had this advantage as he kicked out on his feet near Seth and traveled on his feet a good distance before dropping down to paddle. Now, the second advantage Crosby had was that Crosby had a higher stroke rate over the distance they traveled. I measured Crosby's stroke rate at 2.11 strokes per second, while Seth had a slightly lower stroke rate of 2.05 strokes per second. In general, If the paddling technique is high quality, or in other words, efficient and effective, a higher stroke rate will yield a higher velocity. However, despite these advantages Crosby had, a few things went against him, which the first was that Crosby lost his momentum when he lost balance in his first stroke, adding a large amount of drag and essentially killing all that momentum he had. Now, at the same time, Seth had built up his initial momentum and was at his maximum hole speed already by the time Crosby had his balance and was off to the races. Another thing that went against Crosby was that he had chosen to cross Seth's path. While he may have been able to take advantage of this slightly by crossing behind them, in that paddling directly behind Seth allows him to draft Seth. He didn't stay directly behind him long enough and broke out much too soon. Crosby missed an opportunity to reduce frontal drag by letting Seth take the brunt of it. The last thing that went against Crosby is that his technique broke down much sooner than Seth's between the overreaching, the straight arm recovery, the wide stroke, and even his kicking was not consistently good form. Seth's technique was consistent over the distance in general. Both surfers showed very good technique early on, and both surfers' techniques began to break down as fatigue set in. Seth maintained the best technique consistently over the distance traveled between the two. So there you have it. 3 good techniques for sprint paddling, 3 bad techniques for sprint paddling, and a few bonus techniques and circumstances that led to an extremely entertaining paddle battle in Tahiti. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If this helped in any way, feel free to check out surfingpaddling.com for more paddling technique content to learn how to paddle faster, how to paddle efficiently, and how to prevent injury so that you can catch more waves with less effort. In the meantime, I'll see you in the water.